The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
You might be a tailgater.
If your day is not complete until Tall Tales starts at 4 p.m., you might be a tailgater. If every time you laugh, you now sound like the real Joe, you might be a tailgater. If you don't like Fridays because Tall Tales is not on during the weekend, you might be a tailgater.
Tune in to Tall Tales with me, Bob Klitzkie, Monday through Friday at 4 p.m., only on 93.3 FM. And you, too, can become a tailgater.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Ghislaine guilty. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. A federal jury in New York convicting British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell on all but one of the counts against her in her sex trafficking trial.
Following the verdict, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District praising those women who came forward.
The road to justice has been far too long. But today, justice has been done.
During the more than 2 weeks of graphic testimony, the court heard from 4 women who say they were all underage when Maxwell tricked them into being sexually abused. An attorney for several victims of Maxwell and Epstein saying in a statement, this is the right verdict. Without Ghislaine, Jeffrey would have been a sexual predator without victims on which to perpetrate his sick crimes.
Fox's Alexis McAdams, Maxwell's attorney, says they will appeal her conviction. The U.S. reporting a single-day record for new coronavirus cases.
The 7-day average is more than 280,000 cases per day. The CDC says Omicron is now the dominant strain of COVID in the U.S. after revising an earlier estimate. They say the range of uncertainty is reduced as more data is collected. Health officials say cutting isolation time for COVID patients was necessary to keep society functioning. The nation's largest nursing union says cutting isolation from 10 days to 5 days will endanger patients.
Fox's Steve Harrigan, the White House reporting National Guard troops and ventilators are on their way to the hardest hit states. Potential tornadoes reported in Alabama, damage reported in Calera, south of Birmingham, and in Winfield in the northwest part of the state, where Police Chief Brett Burleson says,
what I've checked is basically the 4 corners of the downtown district, and it appears to be primarily businesses.
No reported injuries so far. Tornado watches continue across parts of Alabama, Georgia, and small portions of the Carolinas. America is listening to Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
We buy a homeowner's policy and never give it another thought until something happens. Life brings changes, and our coverage needs can change. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
President Biden and Russia's President Putin are set to discuss the Russian troop buildup at the Ukrainian border in a phone call Thursday afternoon. It would be their second discussion in recent weeks amid little progress toward ending the crisis. You thought gas prices in 2021 were bad. One fuel price tracking service says it's going to get worse in the new year.
2021 has been marked by, among other things, higher fuel costs. Pump prices are on average $1.20 more than they were at the end of the Trump administration. And now the analysts at GasBuddy.com think most places around the nation will see gas greater than $4 a gallon in 2022, meaning bigger cities in higher tax states could see that price soar even greater. Higher prices indicate a few things, mainly a lack of supply, a higher demand, and the presence of inflation. Eben Brown, Fox News.
Strange new details from Monday's shooting spree in Denver, where police say gunman Lyndon McLeod had written a self-published fictional murder story using the real names of some of the people he'd shot Monday night, most of whom he'd had personal or business relationships with. McLeod's spree was ended when a wounded Lakewood police officer shot and killed him. Police in Texas say they are looking for another 14-year-old suspect in a weekend triple murder.
Garland police are looking for 14-year-old Abel Elias Acosta, saying he opened fire in a gas station convenience store Sunday night, killing 3 teenagers and wounding another. Information about juvenile suspects is not usually disclosed, but police say a court authorized the release due to the nature of the offense and potential risk to the public. Acosta faces charges of capital murder. Authorities initially took a different 14-year-old boy into custody but released him without charge Tuesday based on new information. Police identified the boy's father, Richard Acosta Jr., as the getaway driver in the shooting. The 33-year-old turned himself in Monday after seeing himself on the news. Steve Rappaport, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
As we celebrate this holiday season, we reflect on the hardships of the past 2 years and remain grateful for the family and friends who share our journey and lighten our burdens. The team at Security Title is proud of the work we do to support ourselves and our families, to serve and care for our customers, and to give back to our community. May this season of joy and the new year bring happiness, good health, and prosperity to you and yours. Merry Christmas from all of us at Security Title.
The holidays are here, and you know what that means. Time to gather with family and friends, dress up our homes, and explore Christmas season in paradise. Why not share these moments for a chance to win $100 in cash? Log on to visitguam.com/Instagram today to participate in the Guam Visitors Bureau #Instagram photo and video contest. A winner will be chosen every week, so share your best holiday moments now and win. Brought to you by GVB, making Guam a better place to live, work, and visit.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at GuamAutospot.com.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I really like to say that. I like saying it every day, but you know what? I'm not going to say that anymore this year. But I'll be back next year saying it every day. Second Amendment, United States Constitution, a good way to lead off another, in fact, the last 2021 episode of Tall Tales. Please no crying on the air if you happen to call in at 671-888-255.
There's no crying on Tall Tales.
There's no crying on Tall Tales or baseball. Yes, sir. The Daily News. Our view, Gov Guam must step up efforts to address derelict buildings. This year, the government of Guam made some good progress in dealing with the island's derelict buildings program, but in the coming year, it needs to be more aggressive to get rid of these dangerous blights in our community. Beyond being ugly eyesores, abandoned buildings pose real danger to the community. Children playing in and around these unsafe structures could be seriously hurt in any number of ways. These derelict buildings are breeding grounds for vermin, such as roaches and rats, and become dumping grounds for garbage and trash or dangerous shelters for members of the homeless community who deserve so much more. Public Works last October started its derelict buildings program in Tumum. Owners of abandoned structures are given citations that detail violations and how to proceed, from securing the buildings with boards or a fence, cleaning up the buildings, or demolishing them. The agency's end-of-the-year report identified 115 abandoned structures. Of those, 75 were inspected, 56 citations were issued. There are about 55 cases ongoing. Just 12 cases have been resolved. We had a pretty good year actually identifying buildings.
They didn't run away.
Yeah, we went on, we identified, oh, there's one over there, look at, yeah. Oh, two down there, yeah. Well, there are probably some more around here, but they're not going to go away. So if we miss them today, we can catch them next year.
Just put out some food.
We had a pretty good year actually identifying buildings, said Vince Areola, Director of Public Works, the agency charged with dealing with abandoned buildings. I think that's a small amount, but anything is better than nothing. Well, now there's that's a great philosophy for a director to have. Anything is better than nothing. Yeah. I've heard it said that we live in the land of good enough. But this is a new takeoff on that. It's not, we don't live in the land of good enough. We live in the land of anything is better than nothing. So, you know, when we have highways, we build highways, and it seems like part of the plan of building the highways is to give notice to power, telephone, water, and contractors. We're going to build this, or we're going to resurface this highway. So make sure you make your plans to hold off until after it's built. Then you can come out and trench it, and not smooth it over after you've trenched it. Yeah, but you know, you can drive over it. It's not real smooth, but it's good enough. It'll get you there, right? So we've gone beyond that now. So now we could go from, you know, it was a gravel road up until yesterday, but we came along and compacted it and squirted a little oil on it. So it's not paved, it's not blacktop, it's not concrete, but anything is better than nothing, right? Anything is better than nothing. At least the effort is there. Wow. The effort. That's all
for effort.
Yeah, the old college try. We didn't accomplish anything, but we gave it the old college try. He said that most land and homeowners have complied and have taken steps to repair, restore, or make buildings safer. For those who refuse to address the violations, the agency's next step is legal action. Public Works will place a lien on the property, then take any needed action, which means filing a suit to foreclose on the lien. If that's what we have to do, then we'll certainly do that, because that's part of the unsafe structures statute, Areola said. When property owners refuse to take the required actions, government must step up and do the work. If there is continued refusal to take action, GovGuam must auction off the property so it can recoup the costs of any remediation efforts, with any money left over going to the owner. Ridding our community of abandoned buildings will beautify the island and make it safer. And besides that, anything is better than nothing.
If they sell the legislature building, who does the funds go to? Speaking of abandoned buildings.
There you go. Okay, next we've got the Post. Private sector nonprofit frontliners took risks, deserve more than a pin. This is the Post.
It's better than nothing.
Yeah, anything is better than nothing, yeah. So maybe we could give every one of them a safety pin, right? Not a lapel pin, but just a little safety pin, yeah. One could argue that the giving of a lapel pin as a thank you gesture is welcome, because it's the thought that counts. Yeah, the old saying, it's better to give than to receive. Generosity is to be prized at Christmas time. Yeah, when I was young, I wanted to give everybody a chance to be really generous. It's better to give than receive. Just to take a piece of paper and put it in an envelope. It's better to give than to receive, Bob. We are talking here about the Leon Guerrero Tenorio administration's decision to purchase, using local funds, 5,000 commemorative pins worth about $1.34 each. Anything is better than nothing. Or $6,706 total. The lapel pins were initially meant to be issued to Government of Guam workers and other public sector personnel who were or are still frontliners in the Wuhan virus response. The number of these pins have already been given out among GovGuam workers, with the rollout beginning a few days before Christmas Day, along with a holiday greeting card and a message that says, quote, "These commemorative pins recognize Government of Guam employees who were and continue to be part of the COVID-19 pandemic response since March 2020. This special group of public servants includes frontliners, medical professionals, military service members, and other government employees who are identified as having continued to work either in person. How else can you work but in person? My name is John Smith, and I'm an employee at Guam Memorial Hospital. I don't feel like working today, so I'm going to send John Brown in to work for me because I just don't feel like working in person.
By proxy.
I'll work by proxy. But that's what this thing says. It says, identified as continuing to work either in person or teleworking when island-wide stay-at-home mandates were effective and certain government services were temporarily unavailable to the public. So staying home and teleworking gets you a medal, right?
Well, it works in the military. If you didn't want to go to the front line, you could telefight.
Yeah. Well, in the military, there's a term that it's a little obsolete now, but there's a term for those who weren't armed with rifles but were armed with typewriters. They were known as Remington Raiders. And that's who we're giving medals to here. The GovGuam Remington Raiders.
I like that. That could stick.
Yeah. And then it's on behalf of the Leon Guerrero Tenorio administration, si Juus Maase. The gesture has generated mixed reactions. People have questioned whether this is the right prioritization of local public funds, and they have the right to voice their views. Some of the island residents have reacted by pointing out that GovGuam once again, and it's not GovGuam once again, it's the governor. Come on, Post. The editorial says, pointing out that GovGuam once again thought of its own workers first. Not correct. The governor once again thought of GovGuam workers first, while many outside GovGuam employment sphere kept performing their customer-facing jobs despite the health risks during the pandemic and deserve an equally timed thank you gesture. Come on, Post. That's what's called pulling your punches. Yeah, you were on track for a blue star, but you just blew it with that one sentence.
Let's remind the Post that there is a declared health emergency that gives sole authority to the governor, period.
Exactly. And the point here, if it were properly worded, is good. I had occasion to go into Payless during the height of the emergency. And I don't know a lot of the folks there, but I recognize them because I go in there a lot. And the old faces were in there banging away at the typewriters. Marvin was outside shagging the carts and bringing them back in. And they just kept on doing what they were going to do. It had to be, if you're talking about contagion, it had to have been one of the most contagious places on the island because of the amount of traffic going through there. Yeah, so what are we going to give them? The back of our hand. If we all can remember, many GovGuam workers were fully paid for their jobs even when they stayed home and were, quote, on call. At the height of the pandemic lockdowns and local government-imposed restrictions of public movement, like checkpoints out on Marine Corps Drive. And yet there were numerous private sector workers who risked their lives and their families without expecting anything in return besides their take-home pay. Now, that's a little bit over the top. I don't know of anyone who risked his life. You know, we are talking about the people who ring up cash registers, bag merchandise, stock store shelves, those who pump gasoline at service stations or change tires, church workers, security guards who direct us to temperature check stands and hand sanitizing stations, food and appliance delivery workers, the people who work at water refill stations, laundry shops. Yeah, water refill stations and laundries. Wow, that's a double header right there. Private clinic employees and other front-facing customer service workers who can't opt out of working in the name of pandemic, just to name a few. And by the way, if you're a cashier at Payless, you can't work at home. You can't telework at home. that is the most disappointing part of this whole thing. Then there are nonprofit workers. As an example, the Ministry to the Homeless Soup Kitchen, run by the church, continues to provide meals to dozens of Guam's homeless who would go hungry if the workers and volunteers took a break because of Wuhan virus. A network of workers not employed by GovGuam also helps to ensure that homeless shelters stay open. They run shelters for women and children and victims of abuse, providing a safe haven. They ensure people who need a place to stay to recover from substance abuse don't fall through the non-government safety net cracks. When we asked the administration whether the PIN giving initiative would include frontliners beyond the GovGuam circle, it was only after that query that we heard a mention that private sector frontliners would be given pins too at some point. In other words, we never thought of them because they don't work for the government. Recipients were identified by their respective agencies as Wuhan virus responders. These commemorative pins were funded by the office of the governor. Well, Jose, it was the least she could do. As part of our plan, we continue to distribute pins into the new year to include our private sector and nonprofits who continue to be valued partners in our response, said a spokeswoman for the governor's office. These private sector employees and nonprofit workers would probably not sulk over not getting a lapel pin. I don't think they're going to sulk. For they have gone, that would be the governor's job after Jim Moylan talked about pin the tail on the donkey. That the governor would be the one to do the sulking. She can do it all. She doesn't need any help. But as they say, it's the thought that counts, and the thought that they might not have had a part of the grand plan to issue pens as a thank you when it first hatched just serves to reinforce the perception, and here we go again, that GovGuam does not care. No, it's not GovGuam. It just to reinforce the perception that the governor does not care about those in the private sector as much as she does for those on the government payroll. Pulling your punches here, Post. Private sector and nonprofit frontliners deserve more than just a lapel pin. At the suggestion of Jim Moylan, the governor said, at the suggestion of Jim Moylan, I have come up with another idea to recognize our private sector employers. I'm working on a deal with Parker Brothers to buy 2,000 sets of the game Pin the Tail on the Donkey, which I will award to those private sector workers that helped us out during the dark days of the COVID-19. Yeah. The editorial goes on to say, we can all collectively do our part, not just to say thank you for what they do, but to share our kindness and generosity when we can. Sometimes simple gestures will suffice. A generous tip for a service, a sincere greeting, and a thank you, or a small random gift or kindness, like a pin the tail on the donkey said, will go a long way to brighten their days. Let's start going above and beyond the lapel pins. Yeah. Would have got you a blue star there, Guam Daily Post, except you pulled your punches. The government of Guam doesn't do anything. It is not an animate body. It isn't even a corporate body. So the one that puts the government, doesn't put the government of Guam employees first, the one that puts the government employees only is the governor. You guys stay home, we're going to continue to pay you.
This is a case of nothing would have been better than anything that was done.
Exactly. Wow, our Carl's really early today. He says he's on pins. Does he mean on pins and needles? I know that's about the vaccine, right? On pins and needles. Yeah, our Carl, does the governor know where to locate you to present you with your pin?
I think I can live without a pin.
All right.
I just wanted to, this is going to really be brief. I just want to make a suggestion that they prioritize at the top of the private sector all those people who were deemed non-essential and couldn't work and support their families, and people whose jobs never came back, businesses that were destroyed. These small businesses I'm talking specifically about, they need to be at the top of the list. And maybe a T-shirt, my business was destroyed, my job was destroyed, and all I got was this T-shirt.
How about this? A picture of the governor. It said, I got all of this, the governor got all this magical power, and all I got was this T-shirt.
Exactly.
Good caller, Carl.
Yeah, and I heard recently a news item about studies that are coming out now about this, the children who are growing up in this generation, like the kindergarten kids and pre-kindergarten, who have been found to suffer psychological problems and development problems because of constantly having to wear masks. This is a time when kids are absorbing critical information about how to relate to other people, observing their smile. This is when kids are absorbing huge amounts of data in their minds and learning how to be functioning human beings. And removing of these subconscious signals like smiles and frowns, things like that is really causing a tremendous amount of damage to kids. And also one thing I predict is that by bubble wrapping children, instead of, when you were growing up, when I was growing up, we were out, romping around in the dirt and the mud puddles and breathing in lots of bacteria-laden air. And our immune systems were getting all kinds of exercise. And now that's not happening. So what is going to happen is we're having a generation of children who are having weakened immune systems. One study found that parents who didn't want their kids to have an allergy to peanuts were not giving their kids any peanuts. And what happened is that it resulted in a spike in peanut allergies because these kids weren't being exposed to the elements in the peanuts so that their immune system could develop a a protection against it, and wouldn't overreact. So there's a lot of unintended consequences that are coming down the pike for these policies, and in the future, I predict there's going to be a lot of head shaking going on when we realize how much damage we have done to society and especially to children.
Yeah, I
anyway,
agree,
that's
Carl.
just my thought.
Well, you're right on point, and what we've seen is kind of a magnification of the old. Well, if it saves just one life, it's worth the sacrifice. Which is which is presented as a thoughtful declaration, but it's actually thoughtless, and that's where we are now. Well, there's a virus and it's contagious. Therefore, we've got to shut everything down. We've got to take extraordinary measures that may very well be much more injurious than the disease that we think we're preventing. And of course, we didn't prevent anything. As time goes on, that becomes more and more apparent.
Exactly. Okay, Bob, thanks for allowing me to do a little early chiming in.
Okay, Carl. See you later. See you next year. Short break here.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Subway's Eat Fresh Refresh has done it again, serving up yet another new and improved sub, the Cali Fresh Steak, loaded with tender, flavorful marinated steak on top of thick-cut hickory smoked bacon, smashed avocado, and fresh mozzarella. The Cali Fresh Steak is protein-packed to leave you feeling full and satisfied. Cali Fresh Steak is made on our freshly baked hearty multigrain bread layered with fresh veggies of your choice. Subway, eat fresh.
Portions of the program brought to you by Nissan. Choose your favorite Nissan, and there's an abundance of Nissan automobiles to choose from. Rogues, Rogue Sports, Muranos, Kicks, Sentras, Leafs, Rogues, and then start talking about the deal they want to put together for you. Enjoy 0% APR, or your first 3 payments are on them. Just sign and drive away. Inventory limited, so don't wait. See Nissan Guam first. Wait, there's the fine print. I got to read the thing in fine print ease. On approved credit, 3 payments calculated, 5% APR, 60 months term, and based on the actual selling price of the vehicle only, not including down payment or any aftermarket products or accessories. See Nissan Guam for full details.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
Yeah, and remember now, if you dial 888-8255, you'll get that snotty lady who says, you got to dial 671, moron. It happens to me every time I make a phone call. I'm just trainable, I can't remember these things. So I peeked at Facebook here during the break, and I noticed that we've got a couple of celebrities here. We've got Troy Torres online with us, and Johnny Utah is back. He must have taken a sort of a Christmas break, but Johnny Utah is back. Frank Paris tells us that showing merciful forgiveness to those frontliners who were working until refusing to be vaxxed and were terminated.
They're no longer heroes.
Pins pale to this loss of employment and unable to feed their families. Yeah. Tom Mendiola has an interesting observation, picking up on what someone posted here. Let me just check this thread. Yeah, Sandra Regis, who tells us, oh my gosh, there's a cop wearing a mask in his vehicle. He probably wants to get promoted,
Probably wants a second pin.
Yeah. And then Joanne Titano says, I see that all the time. Then Tom Mendiola comes along and says, that's because he ate a lot of beans last night, but he's happy to know that he doesn't have Wuhan virus.
We're running out of tests, so we got to do what we got to do.
Yeah, I'll just let that one go. thanks for helping.
So did the cop.
Yeah, thanks for. Yeah. Thanks for helping out, Tom. We really appreciate your observation. Okay, today's card. We got more Pacell versus Gods and Arrows, and we're still working on AG versus BJ plus, and we're still working on Tall Tales versus Separatists, and I've got still on the card are Who versus Fauci.
I don't know.
That's our shortstop.
Oh, first base?
Who?
What?
Second base. All right, and we got the left versus the Constitution and Turley versus Tribe. And, of course, I always start out here with Paul Zerzan and systemic racism. Paul touched off a firestorm when he said that what we call red rice is not red, but it's orange. And the Daily News came back with, here's a headline to what the Daily News said. Readers to Zerzan, leave our red rice alone. That's an article by Therese Padua Howe. And it caused me to put together this sign because what happened to Paul so adequately reflects the difference between the narrative and the truth. The word orange is the narrative. The fact that the letters are red is the truth. The word red is the narrative. R-E-D is the narrative. The fact that the letters are orange is the truth. And in the mainland, and when we're talking separatist lingo here, you see that all the time. You see the letters as different colors from the words because the narrative does not coincide with the truth. Okay, Wayne Pacell. And this is an article that ran in the Post. Animal rights group to monitor everything at Dido Game Club. Animal Wellness Action will be monitoring everything that goes on, and that's a quote, at the Dido Game Club, where they're expecting a series of cockfighting derbies beginning on New Year's Day, based on a schedule obtained by the organization, according to Wayne Pacell, president of AWA. I don't think that any of this, if it does occur, is going to escape our gaze, and I urge the media to be present. And I urge other citizens to be present to make sure we are assuring felony-level criminal conspiracies don't occur. AWA and the Animal Wellness Foundation had been tracking the growing number of bird shipments. You know about that. 2 weeks ago, AWA announced that it obtained a secret schedule for cockfighting derbies at the club beginning New Year's Day and continuing through January. Pacell called on the organizers to unwind their illegal plan. Cockfighting was federally banned on Guam and other U.S. territories just before the end of 2019, following the one-year phase-in period set by the 2018 Farm Bill. During Wednesday's press conference, Pacell said they are very hopeful the federal law will be properly enforced, but they also believe that they and citizens general have a role to play as the eyes and ears of law enforcement agency. Now, here's a new player in this game, Eric Sakich, an animal fighting consultant to AWA, said people shouldn't expect to see a cadre of federal agents and officials arriving on the game club on New Year's. It's not going to happen. Sirens wailing, lights blazing, no. Quote, while I couldn't profess to know exactly what their plans are, that would be highly irregular. What people should understand is that the federal government tends to be very methodical and systematic in its approach to these sorts of investigations. Often they will take months gathering intelligence, surveillance, statements from witnesses, and others about those involved in these activities. We don't know exactly what's going to happen on January 1 or days after that, but I think we can be assured that there is monitoring, investigation, intelligence being gathered and provided to federal officials on this activity. So, you know, when this first hit the news, oh, what are they going to do? Who are they going to send out here to enforce this? The tall tales answer was nobody. The FBI is already here. The United States Attorney is already here. So what Mr. Sakich is telling us is this is going to be one of those where, you know, in a certain amount of time, we'll see a story in the paper that reads something like this: 7 indicted for illegal cockfighting, right? And that's how we'll know what happened, because there will be indictments, and we know what happens after that. Now, we had Wayne Pacelle on the show last week. He called in, and when I asked him if he thought the United States Attorney would ever move on this, and this is what Wayne said. He said, I don't have inside information, but I do talk to people. And I'm going to say this: I'll be surprised if there isn't some action by the end of March in 2022. That's just 3 months.
That's pretty specific.
Yeah, that's about 3 months from now. So I sound the same old warning. Don't be taken in by Jose Terlaje, who's really gotten a lot of earned media here. They ran his quote again. Let's see, he says, Senator Terlaje has been a staunch critic of the ban, and AWA in the state of Guam has, quote, real crimes to deal with and should not commit law enforcement resources to appease an outsider who doesn't even recognize our human rights. He's been, you know, he's gotten $1 million worth of earned media out of this quote. And Pacelle has kind of warned, he's kind of said, you know, local officials, you may not agree with the statute. You may really like cockfighting, but who are you helping when you encourage people to break the law? Is that what you really want to do? How are you going to feel if what Pacelle says at the end of March, some of your friends, neighbors, citizens, constituents, supporters, etc., get invited and are subjected to a $250,000 fine? So it's just not the responsible thing to do. And I've talked again about my own philosophy and where it takes me. I believe in federalism, which of course we don't have anymore. We had a federal government once a time. Now we have a national government that has attempted to usurp as much power from the states as it could. And legislation like this ban on cockfighting is not the proper function of the national government. The regulation of behavior, the criminal law, etc., is the province of the states. So I don't like the fact that the national government stuck its nose into this. That's where my federalism takes me. On the other hand, it is a federal law, and because it is a federal law, if you violate it, you do it at your peril. And the penalties can be pretty significant. And you run a risk, because although the FBI has taken some hard knocks here lately, they're pretty good at what they do. Ask Ghislaine Maxwell as an example. So the end of March, that's the reason I put this back on the card today. And when Wayne says, we're going to monitor everything that goes on, suggesting that Wayne has some moles in the local community, people that look just like you and me and everybody else on the island, because they are just like us. But for one reason or another, they're working with Wayne, and they'll be the ones at the cockfight, if there are cockfights, taking notes, taking pictures, talking to people, gathering up names, etc. So if you are a cocker, this would be a really good time to get out of it. As we say in law, vid sap. Videlicet sapienti. A word to the wise is sufficient. Okay, so much for Wayne. And we go back to the Attorney General versus BJ. Let's see, I got to take a break here.
Want to take it now?
Yeah, take a short break, and we're gonna call BJ, and BJ is gonna tell us a little bit about his audit and related matters.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Half a day. Starting January 1st, 2022, single-use carry-out bags will not be given out at stores on Guam. Are you ready? Just a friendly reminder to bring your own bag. Brought to you by Guam Green Growth, UOGC Grant, the Office of the Governor, and Guam EPA.
You know, the other day I was talking to somebody about these new rules about bags and stuff like that, and I said to him, I said, Herman, is your wife going to? Are you going to bring your own bag when you go to Payless? And he said, no, my wife makes me do all the shopping. All right, okay. Before I dive into the Attorney General versus BJ. Oh, I've got BJ on the line. Okay, good. So we'll get to you in just a second here, BJ. I want to make a few points, and then we'll get to BJ. So first of all, there was an article that ran in the Post on PNC last night. Governor defends quarantine actions, welcomes court case to finally get clarity on the issue. And the article says some of the reasons, the governor defending herself. I decided to move forward and get these facilities and suspend rules, regulations, and bureaucratic processes for me to be able to secure and utilize these facilities right away, the governor said. If you recall, and I recall this very vividly, when the virus started coming over to our region, it was really very rampant in the Philippines. President Duarte closed off the Philippines and gave people just a few days to go back to their houses, etc. And then she talks about some more of her self-serving remarks. And then the governor also commented on Public Auditor Benjamin B.J. Cruz's decision, which concluded that the governor did not have the authority to procure quarantine facilities. The governor said the matter is completely outside the public auditor's scope of authority. So the governor's not satisfied with being governor. She wants to be the public auditor, too. He's an auditor. He's not a legal authority. I mean, he's an attorney, skilled and all that. But his authority, I don't think, is the legal authority. I think his authority is more regulatory in nature and deals more with compliance. This is our governor. But he made the opinion that I abused my powers and that my actions were illegal. This is such a very significant accusation. Well, yes, it is, Governor. So I think we need to just settle this in court to be a lot clearer of what exactly my actions were. And I still remain very confident that my actions were within my legal authority as the governor through the Organic Act. She also pointed out that there was no other option because her administration did not have the authority or the jurisdiction to shut down the airport. So the quarantine people could sleep there. Where's my horn, Jose? And my very urgent priority was to try and stop this virus from coming in. And even with all that, you know, of course, because people integrate and interact and all, the virus still penetrated our community. We did everything to try and address that. So, you know, the governor should be glad that this is going to court, because what the Attorney General has filed with the court looks like a paper that he would have filed in opposition to the Attorney General's motion for summary judgment. It's a defense of the governor. And not to mention all of the other hokey aspects of it, like no defendants, no case or controversy, etc. And my opinion yesterday, my carefully promulgated opinion, was that the Attorney General must have set his brain trust to work to come up with a hokey papers to file with the court that isn't a lawsuit, so that he could use that as a foundation for his snotty press release poking fun at the public auditor for not taking action, and the same thing for some senators. Now, the really interesting thing another really interesting thing about the complaint is this. I have the public auditor's report here, and here's some really key language. Table 1 shows the time frame and contract amounts for quarantine and isolation facilities. BJ's got several tables in the executive summary of his audit. And he goes on to say, the governor has an oversight role of the public health emergency in the activation of disaster response and recovery aspects of GovGuam, and the initiation of emergency declaration directly appoints a primary, quote, public health authority to respond to the agency. The public health authority is the director of the Department of Public Health and Social Services with the authorization to exercise all powers. By delegating the Office of the Governor's legal counsel to handle the procurement, it bypassed the procuring authority already provided to the DPHSS director under the PHA and Guam's procurement law and the authority of Guam's chief procurement officer. So this is what this is really about. The governor's son-in-law is a lawyer, was the governor's legal advisor, and instead of following the law in her own executive order, the governor appointed her son-in-law to go out and cut deals with the hotels. So BJ lays out these deals in Table 1, and he labels them as Hotel A, Hotel B, etc. It's a little difficult to know just exactly which hotels he's talking about in Table 1, but those are the bad contracts, the Table 1 contracts. Later on, the government, after BJ said you can't do that, they started doing it right. So I went and looked. I didn't look at the exhibits when I first analyzed the complaints. They're like, 160 pages of exhibits, because the complaint, attached to the complaints are all of these contracts. But when I looked at them, this is what I found. Contract A is an agreement between Guam Homeland Security Office of Civil Defense and Century Hospitality Corporation, DBA Wyndham Garden. In other words, this is one of the good contracts. And the other three fall into that same category. They're not the bad contracts. They're not the contracts negotiated by the governor's son-in-law. So the more I think about it, ordinarily, when you have something you think about and you analyze, the longer you spend with it, the more clear your thinking becomes. The more I analyze this, the more confused I become. Because you remember...
Maybe that's the intent.
Well, it could very well be. It could very well be. Because the parties, the petitioners, the Attorney General, and then the defendants. Defendants in rem are the government's property interests in those four contracts. The four contracts that are in accordance with, the law. So what property interest does the government have in a contract that's already been executed? And as I mentioned before, when you're talking an in rem action, you're talking about a lawsuit against a thing. And the prayer in an in rem action is that either possession or title or both of the thing would be turned over, would be given to the real party in interest. Governor's a real party in interest here, so that's not what the Attorney General prays for. What the Attorney General asks for at the end of his suit is a declaratory judgment from this court regarding the organicity of the Guam procurement law as applied to the acquisition of quarantine stations by the governor. 2, a declaratory judgment from this court regarding the validity of the Guam procurement law during a public health emergency. So he's how he throws all of this stuff in there. Oh, it's an in rem action, and the defendants are these the government's interest in contracts, and what we want the real party in interest. Well, the real party in interest won't walk away with anything, but we want the court to say that the governor was right and BJ was wrong. Now, of course, we don't join BJ as a party here. We don't join anybody as a party. So, you know, we got a really good chance of getting away with this because who's going to object? The only real person in the case is the Attorney General. No respondent, no defendant, no motion to dismiss. So it's really a bizarre, it's a bizarre complaint. It's a bizarre situation. And I still maintain that the reason that the Attorney General put his brain trust to work was so that he could issue a press release that reads like this, in pertinent part. Without acknowledging the opinion of the Supreme Court, several senators accepted the opinion of the auditor as final, called on the Office of the Attorney General for legal action, and criticized the OAG for taking time to analyze the issue. Well, they should know better than that, right? Both the OPA and legislators have had authority and opportunity to take legal action to address the apparent conflict between their opinions on the quarantine process, the Supreme Court opinion, and the express language of the EHPA. Now, what authority does BJ have to take legal action? Same as you and me, and the same with the senators. And we found out already that even to bring a taxpayer's suit, the Supreme Court, or at least a trial court, has said that the fact that the taxpayers, the proper enforcement of Government Spending Act says that any taxpayer has standing to raise spending issues, doesn't abrogate the old-fashioned doctrine of standing, which means you don't have standing unless you have a clear, instant injury yourself. So I don't think BJ could have even brought suit in his own personal capacity, should he desire to have done that. So, like I said a little earlier, the more I see this, the more I'm convinced that my analysis is correct. The press release says neither the OPA nor the legislature have elected to do so. And then he said, we have and will continue to back up our words with action. It may take us a year to do it, but we'll back up our words with action. So, let's see, I'm getting up really close to the halftime break, right, Jose?
Yeah, let's just take 1 minute, and then you can get to the call.
1 minute.
Unless you want to get it. We can cut into the news. It's up to you.
No, I think BJ will hang on till after the halftime break, and then we'll come up with BJ. And I've also got Troy Torres on the line who wants to talk about the AG versus BJ. So let me just see who else is on Facebook here between now and the start of the halftime show. Okay. Yeah. Johnny Utah says, Jose Ted Fajardo Jr., the leftists are strictly into bestiality. there's some mess. Oh, wait a minute. Let me just get this whole thread. We have human beings harmed every day. Kids in DDoE schools. How is it game fall all of a sudden took a front seat ahead of children? A classic case of whataboutism, right? So Jose Ted Pajago Jr. is playing a little whataboutism. I'll come back to that after we talk to Jose and, Troy Torres and BJ. BJ and Jose will be with, and Troy will be with you right after the halftime show.
KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
You will appeal. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. That's the word from Ghislaine Maxwell's attorney following her conviction in New York federal court Wednesday on charges she recruited underage girls for sexual activities with Jeffrey Epstein.
We firmly believe in Ghislaine's innocence. Obviously, we are very disappointed with the verdict. We have already started working on the appeal, and we are confident that she will be vindicated.
Attorney Bob B. Sternheim, the defense says prosecutors didn't even charge Maxwell with anything until after Jeffrey Epstein died in prison from what the medical examiner ruled was a suicide. Maxwell's sentencing has not been scheduled yet. Coronavirus cases in the U.S. have soared to their highest levels yet, 265,000 a day on average over the last week. The administration rushing assistance to some of the states hardest hit.
The president's COVID response team announced National Guard troops and ventilators are on the way to states, a move reminiscent of the early days of the pandemic.
Fox's David Spont reports White House coronavirus response coordinator Jeffrey Zients says if governors need something, they should say something, although Florida's Surgeon General says the administration is actively preventing the distribution of monoclonal antibody treatments. With 1,000 flight cancellations on Wednesday and another 900 cancellations already posted for air travel Thursday, JetBlue now says it is proactively reducing its flight schedule for the next 2 weeks. Several airlines have had difficulty with staffing because of the rapid spread of the Omicron variant. Suspected tornado damage reported Wednesday night in northwest Alabama. The downtown section of the town of Winfield hit.
We've got damage, but everybody's coming together, and we're going to be fine.
That's Winfield's Police Chief Brett Burleson, who says so far there are no reports that anybody's been hurt. The National Weather Service will have to determine if it was another rare December tornado. America is listening to Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Troops still massed near the border with Ukraine. President Biden and Russian President Putin are scheduled to talk again on Thursday.
The U.S. and Russia were already expected to hold talks in Geneva on January 10th ahead of the upcoming Organization for Security and Cooperation meeting. But now President Biden and Russian President Vladimir Putin are scheduled to speak on the phone at Putin's request. The National Security Council says they'll discuss the upcoming talks as they continue to engage with allies, partners, and NATO regarding Russia's military buildup on Ukraine's border. Putin previously demanded, as part of a security proposal, that NATO must stop military activity in Eastern Europe and never offer membership to Ukraine. NATO has already rejected the latter demand. The Biden administration has said they are prepared to implement severe economic sanctions if Russia invades Ukraine. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
A World War II veteran thought to be one of the last surviving members of the Buffalo Soldiers, an all-black cavalry regiment, has died in Florida. Steve Lewis was 99. As they prepare to send out 2021 tax forms, a reminder from the IRS, taxpayers must report all of their income, even from illegal activities like receiving stolen property or taking a bribe. Pennsylvania's Supreme Court rules police officers have to rely on more than just their noses to justify searching a suspected pot smoker's car.
If a cop pulls you over in Pennsylvania and smells marijuana, that's not enough to justify a search of your vehicle without a warrant. The state Supreme Court ruling that the odor of pot can be a consideration, but not the only factor to determine probable cause for a search. There has to be other evidence that the marijuana is illegally possessed. The Supreme Court upheld the decision of a trial judge in an Allendale case 3 years ago that determined a vehicle search was unconstitutional because state troopers conducted it based only on the smell of burned marijuana coming through a window. Kathleen Maloney, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Santa's come in and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 3.99% and up to $50,000. And with the new Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas Loan contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier this year. Equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
As we celebrate this holiday season, we reflect on the hardships of the past 2 years and remain grateful for the family and friends who share our journey and lighten our burdens. The team at Security Title is proud of the work we do to support ourselves and our families, to serve and care for our customers, and to give back to our community. May this season of joy and the new year bring happiness, good health, and prosperity to you and yours. Merry Christmas from all of us at Security Title.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck. Zero down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
Well, here we are once again, another great halftime show here on Tall Tales. And as I was enjoying the show, the drill team, the synchronized card section up in the grandstand, the marching band, etc., I ran into the public auditor of Guam, none other than B.J. Cruz, who is on the line right now and is going to tell us everything we ever wanted to know about the public auditor and the Attorney General. So where should we start, BJ?
Well, first, actually, Bob, I wanted to say that this is not the way I wanted this year to end.
Okay.
We issued this audit back in, I guess it was July. And, you know, we pointed out in the very first, you just have to read the executive summary, the first two paragraphs.
Sure.
We pointed out in the first paragraph that we acknowledged that there was a world emergency pandemic, and that it was necessary to get these hotels, but we had problems with the way that it was done. We found that there was improper procuring authority, and that there was a conflict of interest, and that there was a incomplete procurement record and contract issues. The second paragraph of the executive summary says, in two subsequent emergency procurements, the one in May that you're referring to that are the rem of this in-rem action, rectified the first two deficiencies, and so we had no problem with it. We still had problems with procurement record and the length of the contracts that were signed, but you know we really weren't that critical of what was going on. We just wanted to point out, as we do as auditors, that we felt that there was an ethical issue in the conflict of interest, and those of us that have taken the procurement class, I have drilled into us from almost every day, John Thomas Brown going, if you're going to procure, ask for the sheriff. Ask for the badge. If they don't have the badge, then they don't have the authority to procure. And there was a time when the governor, as an able governor, had procuring authority, but the legislature has since taken that away and given it to the chief procurement officer and the Department of Public Works. Director of Public Works, and yes, there are some powers in the executive, in the Emergency Health Act, but those powers really vest in the public health official and Homeland Security, and I think the front office acknowledged that by making all the subsequent procurement of hotels by Homeland Security, as signed by Charles Esteves, who was the Homeland Security advisor at the time. But I also wanted to point out that though March of 2020 was a very frightening period, to the governor's credit, before anybody else on island, at least around, in January, the governor knew that this pandemic was coming. We found emails and we make reference to it in the audit. We found emails from January where the then Homeland Security advisor had been instructed and was supposed to have been starting the procurement process to find emergency quarantine hotels in January, 2 full months before March the 20th, that he had been instructed to look for the hotel. But the governor knew and was on top of it. Unfortunately, the Homeland Security advisor at the time dropped the ball, and March 19th came around, and something had to be done, and done quickly. And fortunately or unfortunately, the only other person that she could depend on was her legal counsel, who fortunately or unfortunately was also her son-in-law, and instructed him to do the procuring. And we probably wouldn't have had a major problem with the legal counsel of the governor's office doing that emergency procuring at the time. But when the procurement also started to deal with Pacific Star, my auditors found that or at least there was a news story about it, that there might have been a conflict of interest because the Bank of Guam supposedly had a large loan out to Pacific Star. And so my auditors, doing due diligence, went to land management and were able to get a copy of the mortgage that was on file at land management. And so we were able to substantiate that, in fact, there was about a $32 million loan out to Pacific Star, and that it was our office's opinion that both of them should have known that this was the bank that their family owns was going to be getting a procurement, and the ethics rules say that when you find that there's a potential for a conflict of interest, you should immediately stop, sign something that you're recused from this, and cease the operation and have somebody else take it. Unfortunately, they proceeded, and so we just decided, we thought that should be a question cost. And so what we did was we then said the entire first procuring of hotels in March were question cost of $3 million. We have no problem. We didn't question the contracts that were signed in April and May and September and August and all the subsequent ones that were done by Homeland Security. We had no problems with those. We just, as auditors, pointed out that there was this conflict of interest, that the person should have recused and not moved forward with it and had somebody else sign it. Continue with the procuring and not have their signatures on it, but it unfortunately didn't happen. And as far as this suit is concerned, if I was to be asked what I thought of the suit, well, yeah, those four are okay. I'd have no problem with it. The governor had the authority to sign those documents. Our only problem with it is that those contracts were longer than the 30 days that the emergency authority that she had in her executive order, and the legislature didn't expand the 30 days authority to 90 days until October and November last year. And so we questioned the length of the contracts because we thought that they only had authority for 30-day contracts, not 60 days, not 90 days, not 6 months. And those were issues that we had with subsequent contracts, but at least we lauded the fact that they knew that the authority to procure the hotels was with Homeland Security and the Chief Procurement Office.
Now, the matter of the son-in-law is not mentioned at all in the lawsuit. I think you've had a chance to review the so-called complaint on file, correct, BJ?
Yes, and that's why I said if I was to be asked what I thought of the lawsuit as currently filed, I'd have no problem with it, because those four contracts we don't challenge. We may challenge the length of the contracts, but it was properly procured. What we question, and the $3 million that we have in the audit that we question, was the $3 million for the payment of hotels during March and April that to us had questionable origins, and so we decided to say the entire amount. I mean, we had a discussion in the office. Do we only question the cost of the $1.8 million that was going to Pacific Star, or do we include everything? And it was our determination under the guidelines that we were working with was to say that if you shouldn't have been involved in that procuring one hotel, procuring all four probably should be questioned. You shouldn't have been involved in any of that decision making at that time.
Sure.
And so it's the wrong set of documents that they have. And the problem that they're going to have is that there are no signed contracts for those. Those are all purchase orders.
So the papers that are attached as exhibits are purchase orders, not contracts?
No. The ones that are attached as exhibits A through E or 1 through 4 are actual contracts.
Yeah.
So what should be what I would hope that they would have in court would be the purchase orders for payments made in March and April.
Okay.
I'd love to be. I would join them in trying to get the court to settle that issue because our reading is that the office of the governor down to ADLOOP itself does not have the authority to procure. It's part of the part of the problem is that governor's office also includes Homeland Security.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least it's supposed to be within the governor's office. But the thing is that Homeland Security is separate from the legal office at the governor's office. And the legal office at the governor's office shouldn't be doing procuring. It should be Homeland Security with GSA that should be doing the procuring.
So let's refer to those contracts or those purchase orders as the son-in-law deals, right?
Well,
and they were done with purchase orders rather than contracts.
Correct.
Yeah, and the contracts that are attached to the complaint don't have that same flaw. They're not son-in-law contracts. That was limited only to the purchase orders. Am I correct? So, looking at the papers filed in court, I maintain that this is not a lawsuit, because in order to have a lawsuit, you have to have there's some essential elements. First, you have to have a plaintiff or a petitioner. Second, you have to have a defendant or a respondent. And third, you have to have a controversy. This one only has one out of the three. It's got a plaintiff. There's no defendant, and there's no controversy. So,
well, I suppose this office could make the determination that it could move the court for the right to intervene. And I suppose even the legislature could ask to intervene if they wanted to. But I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Right now, the BREM issues that are attached are the wrong ones.
So
I'd like for them to have before the court the purchase orders of March and April to determine whether or not those should be questioned cost.
And of course, that's not going to happen because it's apparent to me that the Attorney General sees his job here is prettying up what the governor did, removing all of the smudges and making it look really nice. And he
well, I'm not going to.
Yeah, I know that's
I'm not going to try. I have to maintain a relationship, and I respect the Attorney General, and we have a lot to work with. I'm issuing an audit tomorrow that I'm going to need his assistance on, and so I don't want to burn any bridges. I'm just saying.
I understand.
So I don't, I'm not going to attribute anything to them. I'm just saying that.
And I wouldn't ask you to, but my point is this: that reading all of the papers, the exhibits, et cetera, and standing back and thinking about it a little bit. The Attorney General didn't put anything in there that works against the governor. So he'd be the last person to bring the purchase orders and the son-in-law dimension before the court. Otherwise, it would have been in the complaint. And if there's no defendant, it's not going to get before the court. And if the judge doesn't kick the case out sua sponte, dismiss it sua sponte, and she gets a favorable ruling on this, then that kind of becomes res judicata, that you can have your son-in-law go out and do this with purchase orders, and you're going to be okay.
Well, no, not really, because that wasn't what was before the court. What was before the court were 4 contracts signed by Charles Estevez.
Understood.
And that's the only thing that's res judicata. You might try to carry it back, but no, you really, that really hasn't been dealt with. Yeah, I may have sued you, but I didn't sue your producer. It's two different things.
I agree, but a declaratory judgment regarding the organicity of the procurement law as it applies to the acquisition of quarantine stations, a declaratory judgment regarding the validity of the procurement law during the public health emergency. So if she gets these declaratory judgments, it doesn't obliterate the son-in-law purchase order dimension of it, but it really kind of is a distraction, and it would be the kind of thing that people could wave around and say, well, look, the court ruled in the governor's favor. I guess she didn't do anything wrong. And that, to me, is the reason that the suit was filed. I'm not going to ask you to agree or disagree or anything, because I understand the sensitivity of your position, BJ, and I think you handle it, your position very, very well in that regard. I think you've pretty much set out to be impartial, and I think that's the way you're perceived. And I'd be the last one on the island to try to damage that perception.
Yeah, I'm sorry this is the way that the last working day of the year is ending. I mean, this is not the way that I wanted to go out. I mean, I just issued one audit, and I have my staff working tomorrow so I can issue another audit, and I'll be issuing my audit plan for next year, Monday or Tuesday. And so we're busy here and having to deal with all this background noise of a lawsuit, and is just something that I didn't need at this point.
I agree.
But,
I agree.
But we're continuing with our work, and as I said, we just issued one audit at 4 o'clock this afternoon. I have some staff coming in tomorrow to issue one more audit tomorrow before the end of the day, before the end of the year, because I want it issued this calendar year, and then I will issue my audit plan for calendar year 22 next week.
BJ, I really appreciate your working tall tales into your so busy schedule, and I think you provided a real public service by explaining what exactly is going on with your audit and that whole controversy. So thank you very much.
And I just invite the public to just read the executive summary. I know it's a 30 or 40-page audit. Forget the whole audit. Just read the executive summary. It's fairly simple, and it points out, and we acknowledge, and we commend the governor for her work. I mean, we commended her for having the foresight in January to foresee that that it was happening, and assigning somebody to do it. It was unfortunate that it wasn't followed through. But that's not what this suit is about, and that's not what's going to get clarified. But in our audit, we were very fair in pointing all that out, that they were ahead of themselves, and they were trying to do the right thing, and they subsequently did the right thing again. And with all the subsequent procurements, but it was just that those sets of just March and April of purchase orders that were questionable, and that's our job is to point those things out, both ethically and legally, and somebody else can address it. The Attorney General can address the legal or illegal findings that we make, and the Ethics Commission, now that it's fully functioned, and can address the other issue.
The Ethics Commission is now
not for me.
fully functional? Did you say the Ethics Commission is now fully functional?
Well, it has an executive director, staff, and they just got legislation to hire counsel, and they have they have all the members there. I hope. I mean, they can deal with it now. I mean, we just pointed out that we have questions about this conflict of interest. In tomorrow's audit that we're going to issue, we're also raising another conflict of interest issue on an ethical ground, and I'm hoping that the Ethics Commission and the Attorney General will help me resolve those issues.
Okay, BJ.
That's all we can do is just point that out, and hopefully everybody else will do whatever else they have to do. But as I said, this is not the way that I wanted to end this year, and I had hoped that we could have just let sleeping dogs lie, but I guess sometimes you have to wake them up. It's unfortunate.
Hear what you say.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for spending this time with us, BJ. I really appreciate it.
Okay, no problem.
And so do I'm sure all of the tailgaters out there in our international radio listening audience appear to appreciate the fact that BJ took time out of his busy schedule to come in here and help us out with this. And it's amazing. Yeah, let's head for Wrigley Field. And Troy, I know you wouldn't want to hang on the phone all that time, but if you can call in now, we'll put you on right after the seventh inning stretch here in Wrigley Field. I'm really anxious to hear what you got to say.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Half a day. Starting January 1st, 2022, single-use carry-out bags will not be given out at stores on Guam. Are you ready? Just a friendly reminder to bring your own bag. Brought to you by Guam Green Growth, UOG Sea Grant, the Office of the Governor, and Guam EPA.
Portions of the program brought to you by Nissan. Choose your favorite Nissan, and there's an abundance of Nissan automobiles to choose from. Rogues, Rogue Sports, Muranos, Kicks, Sentras, Leafs, Rogues, and then start talking about the deal they want to put together for you. Enjoy 0% APR, or your first 3 payments are on them. Just sign and drive away. Inventory limited, so don't wait. See Nissan Guam first. Wait, there's the fine print. I got to read the thing in fine print ease. On approved credit, 3 payments calculated, 5% APR, 60 months term, and based on the actual selling price of the vehicle only, not including down payment or any aftermarket products or accessories. See Nissan Guam for full details.
So here we are, Wrigley Field in Chicago, the 7th inning stretch, and I'm really happy to say that as I was stumbling around in the center field bleachers, I happened upon the publisher of Candid News, Troy Torres, who is a 21st century muckraker, keeping up the tradition. Glad to have you on board, Troy. What can you tell us about the public auditor and the attorney general?
Hi, Bob. Hi, Jose. Thank you so much for having me. You know, I only caught the tail end of the public auditor's talk with you. I'll replay it later. But from what I understand of this issue, you know, we've been following this issue since it became an issue back in 2020 when Hai Hyun, the governor's then legal counsel and son-in-law, it was found engaged in what the OPA audit says was not legal conduct. And what I think we see with the Attorney General here is a sort of bait and switch or smoke and mirrors. I don't know what you want to call it, but the Attorney General is bringing something to the court for declaratory judgment that the public auditor didn't dispute. And I don't know if the public auditor talked about that, but I thought when the Attorney General says, you know, we want to find out again because I'm being criticized whether the governor has these authorities under the Emergency Health Powers Act. That doesn't answer what the public auditor was saying in his audit. The public auditor was talking about a specific case of violations of the procurement law that a member of the governor's office engaged in, who also happens to be a member of the governor's family. And I just think I don't think any of us should let this go, because this was at the beginning of the pandemic. It spoke to the use of federal funds at the start of the pandemic, and it might speak to how federal funds have been used since. We don't know, but I think there just needs to be a magnifying glass and all this stuff. And this case involving the governor's then legal counsel just really we all need to be on top of it.
Well, it appears that what the Attorney General wants to do is make it go away. He's filed papers in court, and if you've been following what my theory is, it isn't a lawsuit because there's no defendant and there's no case or controversy. It's just the Attorney General filing some papers to say, court, why don't you tell us that the governor didn't do anything wrong? And there's nobody on the other side to say, hey, but the governor did something wrong.
I agree with you. I just think this is the Attorney General trying to trick us into a sense of, into the sense that nothing was wrong. The public auditor is the one who is wrong here. The senators who are complaining about this, it's just nonsense. But you know what? I'm gonna let the courts handle this and ask them a question that isn't even relevant to what the audit was saying.
You got it.
And I also heard what you said about I think it was yesterday, you were talking about the public auditor's role and how the Attorney General criticized that the public auditor, could have taken legal recourse, but he actually did. He published an audit, and all the Attorney General obviously read the audit. And unfortunately, the only person who can decide this to prosecute the governor's former legal counsel or anyone else who, in that audit or because of that, the audit findings and a proper investigation would have been found to have conducted themselves illegally, is the Attorney General. And I've also asked the Attorney General's office whether the Attorney General himself walled himself from making any of these decisions, and they have not responded to that question yet. And that concerns me because we know that the Attorney General is friends with this person, and I don't know what the ethical rules are about stuff like that, but it would seem to me that it almost seems like
you know what, Troy, there isn't any ethical rule about lawyers and friends because the general principle is that no lawyer ever has any friends. But anyhow, sorry.
Well, I like to think we're friends, Bob, and you're a lawyer.
All right, okay.
That's all I really wanted to say about that, and I'm glad the public auditor is speaking out about it, and I really hope that. I mean, I don't know how else to put the Attorney General's feet to the fire on this except through public pressure, but he's really the only person who can decide whether this case moves forward in a criminal way, not through a civil suit or a request for declaratory relief.
And of course, the chances of public pressure are not good because every one of the four media outlets just wrote it. Oh, Attorney General filed suit. Didn't notice that there's no defendant. Didn't notice that there's no issue. And I used the green cheese example yesterday. If a government official said we're going to the moon to harvest green cheese, they would just report it. You know, okay, green. That's good. I like green cheese, you know.
Don't we all?
I think one of the qualifications to be a reporter with many, if not most, of the media outlets here is they cannot have any curiosity at all. They just have to take whatever is told to them and let it go.
I think it died with Generation X or something. I don't know.
Could be. Well, I suspect that Candid News is not going to let this go, Troy.
No, we shouldn't. We just can't let something like that go. We get criticized for concentrating a lot of our time on the corruption that's going on over in the CNMI. And a lot of times what I have to say is, Governor Lulian Guerrero is just not at that same level as Governor Ralph Torres. But here really is an opportunity for all of the media to look at our governor and say, Governor, you have to answer for this because this really stinks. Yes. and now the Attorney General's got that stench on it.
Yeah. Well, if it really stinks and you pick up something that really stinks, you're going to start stinking yourself, right, Troy?
Well, yeah. And it's sad because, I had the Attorney General has been prosecuting CSD cases and taking a firm stance against criminal sexual conduct, and I thought that was great. He filed his first corruption case when he indicted Joey Terlahi. I thought he was off to a good start, and then this. It's very disappointing.
It is. It is.
Well, you guys have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I really appreciate your time, Bob and Jose and Tall Tales.
Yeah, well, okay, Troy, and I'm glad you took time out from your busy day, and I'll be peeking at Candid News tomorrow morning for sure. Nice talking to you.
Appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, well, Troy got it.
You got it right on the head. And
Yeah.
when I was listening to the auditor, the Office of the Auditor, I was thinking BJ was giving us clarification that all the attachments of the contracts have nothing to do with his objections.
Exactly.
And none of his objections are included in the lawsuit.
Exactly. That's how I started the show.
Which is why I don't understand why he's satisfied with the lawsuit. I was kind of confused with that.
I think what he meant was he is satisfied with that part of the lawsuit, those contracts. I don't think he's satisfied with the lawsuit.
But the second part to my confusion is, didn't the press release from the Attorney General's office mention the objections from they mentioned something about the auditor doesn't have legal standing to have an objection or something like, or have a legal opinion?
Without acknowledging the opinion of the Supreme Court, several senators accepted the opinion of the auditor as final, called on the Attorney General for legal action, and criticized the OAG for taking time to analyze. Both the OPA and legislators have had authority and opportunity to take legal action, and of course they haven't.
Right, and so everything that they had talked about, he didn't include in this lawsuit.
Exactly.
Which is just strange. Well, no, it's not strange.
It is not strange at all. In fact, it is the explanation. Because if I pick up something that's supposed to be a lawsuit and I don't see any defendants and I don't see any case for controversy and I don't see a prayer that matches the allegations in the complaint, I think, why would anybody do this? Now I know. It's a means of burnishing the reputation of the governor.
A good magician knows how to do misdirection.
Exactly.
Nothing up my sleeve.
Yeah. Take a look at this beautiful girl over here. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So if it works out, then going into the election season, and opposition research is, well, the governor's son-in-law, et cetera, court said it was okay. I've got the judgment right here. The Attorney General filed suit to find out what the law was. Yeah, and it's just BS. It's just completely BS. Well, I'm glad that Troy is on it. I didn't want to ask BJ, but I suspect the chances of him filing a motion to intervene are somewhere down between slim and none, and it would not be a good idea for him to do that, because he has to keep, even in the case of something like this, where the Attorney General goes out of his way to sling some mud at BJ. BJ's not in a position where he ought to get into that kind of a match with another government official.
All he has to do is not enter this fabricated arena. That's all.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, so we're getting pretty close to time to go to Churchill Downs. And I did want to comment on something in Facebook here before I go to the next item on the card. and that is Jose Ted Pajago Jr. We have this goes back to Wayne Pacell. We have human beings harmed every day, kids in GDOE schools. How is it game foul all of a sudden took a front seat ahead of children? Once again, a classic case of whataboutism. You expect Wayne Pacell, who runs the animal welfare organization, to be concerned about children. And if you believe in whataboutism, that's the complete argument. No matter what it is that someone, we really should be paving our highways. We've got a lot of derelict buildings on this island, and you want to pave highways? What about the derelict buildings?
And it's the same argument Senator Tarlahi made. You talk about animal rights, but what about denying us our human rights?
Yeah, exactly. That is not an argument at all. And in effect, you just strengthen the argument that you're trying to rebut.
I think there's a hidden story here that everyone's concentrating on the chickens, and no one's talking about the other element that's involved in these cockfighting.
The money.
The money.
Yeah.
Lots of money involved.
There is. Yeah, and I've been to the cockpit a few times, and there's a lot of money. And if you wanted to get involved in any kind of a transaction that was a cash transaction, money laundering or whatever, it's the perfect place to do it because you're not out of place with a huge wad of cash. Yeah, and obviously a lot of money changes hands on the bets and side bets and everything like that. So there's some real big money there.
I think it's similar to the narrative of not wanting to talk about these Liberty machines also.
Uh-huh.
Again, there's connections there.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, it'd be interesting if we could find out, trace some of the money trail from the cockpit back out into the community and see where we'd wind up, find out where some of the opposition comes from.
We may find out in March.
It's very possible. And you recall when I was talking with Wayne, I said what may very well happen is that federal investigators in Oklahoma or one of the states get involved, do an investigation of these suppliers that are sending all the chickens out here and build a case against them, and then in the process build cases against people on Guam that are receiving the chickens and cockfighting and doing all the rest of the stuff. That's the kind of the stuff that, that the feds really like to do, these enterprise prosecutions.
I don't think they're interested in Leghorn, Foghorn.
No. But once again, I would reoffer the warning. If you're doing it, this would be a real good time to stop. Maybe you can get away with it if you stop now. So back to Jose Ted Pago Jr. Then Johnny Utah comes back and says the leftists are sickly and strictly into bestiality. There's some messed up pet laws in the mainland. The left kills human babies but protects the babies of beasts. Very true. Very true.
Yeah, the endangered species list, we're not allowed to take turtle eggs here.
Uh-huh.
But we're allowed to destroy humans here. Not just the eggs.
No.
The humans.
The fertilized eggs, the germinated eggs. And Jose Martinez comes back in on this thread here. The pushback against the ban is more about maintaining relationships with major campaign donors. Yeah. So we'll see. Of course, we're already very suspicious of Jose Pedo Terlahi, right? We'll see how that works out for him. Pam comes online and said, Candid News Group, Guardians of Guam and the CNMI. Okay, so the next item on the card is Tall Tales versus the Separatists. So I guess that'll be my last item, my last card item for this year. Heading for Churchill Downs.
The holiday holidays are here, and you know what that means. Time to gather with family and friends, dress up our homes, and explore Christmas season in paradise. Why not share these moments for a chance to win $100 in cash? Log on to visit guam.com/Instagram today to participate in the Guam Visitors Bureau #Instagram photo and video contest. A winner will be chosen every week, so share your best holiday moments now and win. Brought to you by GVB, making Guam a better place to live, work, and visit.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
So here we are, Churchill Downs, and while I'm in Churchill Downs, I get a message that Johnny Utah wants to talk to me, and he wants to talk to me about Omicron and a holiday greeting. So we haven't had a chance to chat with Johnny Utah for a while. So Johnny Utah, half a day.
Half a day, Judge Bob.
So what can you tell me about Omicron?
Well, first of all, I want to say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and God bless you guys there on Guam. I hope everything's going good there for y'all. I think about you a lot. We got a couple of things in our house from Guam that we have hanging on our living room even. So, and my wife is from Guam, and so we think about Guam a lot. Just want to let you know that.
That's good. Well, my best to your wife.
Yes. But as for the Omicron, and I do work in the medical field, and even on here in Utah, not in Guam, but here on the mainland, Omicron, I may get in trouble for this, I don't know, but it's a joke. This is herd immunity. It's the virus at the end of its lifespan that is very weak and spreading like wildfire and basically creating a herd immunity for the entire nation. And on the TV, on the popular news stations, they don't talk about anything detrimental with it. They just keep talking about all the infection rates, the high numbers of infections that are going on with Omicron. But they don't talk about how many hospitalizations there are, how many deaths there are, how many ICU beds are taken up, how many people are on ventilators, because it's not happening.
Yeah.
It's a fake pandemic now. And this is all about the leftist socialist takeover of our country and them wanting to implement their socialist way of thinking over the, capitalist mindset of a democracy. They're shutting down the airlines. They're shutting down businesses. They're trying, anything the Fed's got their hands on, they're really trying to take control of, especially the FAA and the airline industry. That's one of the biggest ones that's getting hit right now, and it really hurt us for the holiday travels and what have you. Put a lot of people in a lot of binds, and in the name of what? In the name of Omicron? As if this is, and it's just like everyday flu.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, Johnny Utah, and this is the dream come true for the leftist statists that want to take control of everything, isn't it?
Yes. And I wouldn't say it's a dream come true in per se towards like the Marxist revolution that your other callers call in and talk about, as a analogy for what's happening today in Russia back in the 1900s. The big difference between then and now is the education level of the right, the individuals that are standing up to this attempted takeover are pretty educated. We have access to the internet, we have access to communication, and we have the ability to communicate where, in the Marxist era of Russia, they didn't have that ability. They didn't have that ability they had to believe what they were told by the government. And I think we have some unique abilities here, just like our First Amendment right to bear arms, and, the left has not heard from the right yet. January 6th, that so-called insurrection, that was no insurrection. That was fake. That wasn't real. They haven't seen an insurrection yet.
Agreed. I agree, Johnny Utah.
Thank you, sir. Well, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
And I'm really, really glad you called us to give us those season greetings. And I guess we'll be talking to you next year, Johnny Utah.
I hope so. Stay on the side of the right. I love listening to your show. You guys are awesome.
Thanks again, Johnny Utah. So long. Johnny Utah.
Don't mind them calls.
No, we don't mind. We can listen to calls like that all day long. I peeked at Facebook here, and we got a season's greetings from Sockman Mario Bora, yeah.
From San Diego.
From San Diego, yeah.
He and his brother were the architect and builders of the Sackman that they put out there in the ports. Very, very awesome.
I saw the Sackman under construction in the Guam Club in San Diego when the Bora brothers were building it. So yeah, nice work. Okay, I got about 6 more minutes to go here, so I'm going to spend a little bit more time with the separatist movement. Once again, what I've been talking about and what I will continue to talk about is this 20-page supplement that ran in the Daily News a couple of Fridays ago, put out by it says on the front here, by the Commission on Decolonization. But of course, if you listen to the show, you know that is not the name of that organization. That organization was created by Hope Cristobal in Public Law 23-147, and the name of the organization is the Commission on Decolonization for the Implementation and Exercise of Chamorro Self-Determination. So if you're not Chamorro, it's got nothing to do with you, quote unquote. And the statute starts out by lying to you, basically, by misquoting the Treaty of Paris. And it did create this papier-mâché commission called the Commission on Decolonization for the Implementation and Exercise of Chamorro Self-Determination, which has put out this 20-page supplement. And I warn those who pick it up to read it that it is designed to channel your thoughts in one direction towards independence, because the magic word is sovereignty. If you don't have sovereignty, you really have a serious problem. Colonialization is bad. Being a colony is the worst possible existence you could have. Being sovereign is the best. So the idea is to abandon the colony status and become sovereign. That's what it's all about. And it's tricky because the commission holds up three possibilities, only one of which is a possibility. Free association is not a legal possibility. Statehood is not a factual possibility. That leaves only independence, which is legal and possible. And that's exactly the channeling that goes on here. Now, where I left off talking about this yesterday was the part of the paper that says, who are the colonized? And I'll pick up kind of where I left off. And it said, it is because of this that Guam law protects the right of self-determination for the native inhabitants of Guam. Native inhabitants of Guam meaning Chamorros. Framing this claim to the right of self-determination based on a common history connection, colonialization ensures that this right is not debatable. So the right of self-determination for Chamorros, repeating again, this right is not debatable. I said, so right here, it's right here in black and white. So I guess I'm doing something that's very, very wrong, because I've always held that if there is a reason to have a commission for Chamorro self-determination, we need to find out if anybody wants it beside Michael Bavacqua and Melvin Wanpet. If anybody else wants it, and if no one wants it, if there aren't a substantial people that want it, then why bother? Well, you have to, because it's decolonization. So when I say things like that, I'm flying in the face of the orthodoxy that the Commission on Decolonization would force on everyone. That is, that self-determination based on a common history, etc., ensures that this right is not debatable. Now, when I had the temerity to go before the Rotary Club of Guam and say some of the same things that I say on the show here, that decolonization that is not a synonym for Chamorro self-determination, some of these other things, Melvin Bora came back instantly in the press pointing out that I didn't know what I was talking about. Well, that's it. We're into the end of the year. It's been a great year. Let's go, Brandon, and I'll see you next year.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Guilty of sex trafficking. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Ghislaine Maxwell convicted yesterday in New York federal court.
Maxwell faces decades in prison after a jury of 6 men and 6 women convicted her on sex trafficking, conspiracy, and other charges. Defense attorney Bobby Sternheim said this decision will not be the last word.
We have already started working on the appeal, and we are confident that she will be vindicated.
The defense has maintained Maxwell is being punished for the actions of Jeffrey Epstein, who took his own life before standing trial on sex abuse charges.
Fox's Gernal Scott, after 6 days of deliberations without a verdict, the jury hearing the fraud trial of former Theranos CEO Elizabeth Holmes is taking a holiday break until next week. Coronavirus cases surging to the highest daily average yet as the end of winter break approaches. Parents wondering if their kids will be headed back to the classroom.
The return to normal still seems to be out of reach for some students. Parents must face the potential of schools returning to remote learning. The Chicago Teachers Union polled its rank and file. An overwhelming majority supported a shift back to remote learning. Teachers in New York City expressed similar concerns, but the mayor insists kids need to be in school. In New Jersey and New Mexico, some school districts will go remote instead of returning in person next week. In fact, over 1,000 schools in 24 states are facing a disruption to in-person learning.
Fox's Mike Tobin fighting a losing battle with staffing flights as the Omicron variant surges. JetBlue has announced it is scaling back its regularly scheduled flights for the next 2 weeks. Already more than 930 commercial airline flights in the U.S. scheduled for Thursday have been canceled. Ignoring a call from the U.S. State Department to release them, authorities in Hong Kong have charged 2 employees of a pro-democracy newspaper with sedition. America is listening to Fox News.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network, stay on top of